Namanda, 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 Namanda. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. こんにちは。Thank you very much for December monthly memorial service today. I see a lot of people. I see about 25 people, and Honda today I'm very happy to see. And Rev Turner and myself are happy to officiate this December memorial, monthly memorial service for your loved one who passed away in the month of December. The purpose of this service is you remember and you collect your loved one and who left this world and entered to the supreme nirvana, the Amida Buddha's realm. We call it Pure Land, which is supreme nirvana. ね、今日は本当に皆様たくさんの方が本堂に来ていただいております。12月の初月法要です。ただいまからタナ先生と私で皆様方の愛される方々、12月にね、ご往生された方々です。その方を偲ぶ会ですね。思い出してね、もう一度一緒に南無阿弥陀仏をお唱えする大事な法要でございます。Now, I would like to explain the service order today, and then minister is going to chant a Sambujo, inviting that Amida Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and all the Buddhas from universe for this service, and then we chant a Jusege.When we start a Jusege, please come forward and offer the incense, please. We set up the 3 burners, okay? And then while we're chanting, we'll show the AV people is going to show your names of your loved one on a screen, so you can find the name of your loved one on a screen, okay? それでは今日の法要の順番ですね。ご説明申し上げますけれども、まずタナ先生と私で、三部上をお唱えいたしまして、それから十聖芸をお唱えいたしますときに、どうかこちらの方の前の方に、お証拠を用意しておりますのでお越しください。で、私たちが、お経をお唱えしているときに、皆様方の本当に愛されているご往生された方々のお名前がこのスクリーンの方に映し出されます。ですからどうぞ気をつけてご覧になってください。よろしくお願いいたします。And this one is printed copy, the showing all the names of your loved ones. I'm going to offer this paper to the Amida Buddha. そしてこれが皆様方のご往生された方々のお名前が載っておりますペーパーでございます。これを阿弥陀様にただいまから、差し上げますので、ということでよろしくお願いします。We're going to chant a 三部長 and Jusege now. Thank you.釈迦如来入道場三下落不浄実法如来入道場三下落 Seigon. Please come forward, offer the incense, please. Please come forward and offer the incense, please. 石無常道志願不満足政府上昇学がお無力不意大摂取不最小民具政府上昇学が市場分の名所長寺法空虚未所門政府上昇学利欲人少年上映主本業しぐむ浄土一生天人死人力現代公不詳無才道少女三苦名交際集約難回避地営言名詞根門閉塞小悪道通断前修門高僧上満度いよろじぽ日月修十期天候不言一種解放存公正苦毒法上内集中説法ししく供養一切仏具足修徳本元年心上満徳意三害を女分無下地通断未不詳願学営力投資最小損志願や効果大戦王感動航空商天人東内妙見ナマンダブ マンダブナマンダブガンニシクドク平等性一切道本菩提心往生安楽ナマミダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏。But first, I would like to give you the Japanese message, so I will change my language about 15 minutes or so. And after that, Rev Jon Turner will give it English. それで私の方から日本語の法話をさせていただきます。今日は本当にお越しくださいましてありがとうございます。今日の私のですね、お話は2021年の漢字はということです。皆さんはようご存知だと思いますけれども、本堂にお集まりの方、またオンラインでね、ご覧になっていただいている方もあろうかと思いますけれども、日本では毎年漢字ね、今年の、いわゆる漢字というのを12月31日にですね、映し出すんですね。これが今お見せいたしておりますのがこれ2020年の漢字ですね。今から2年前です。ちょうどコロナが3月から始まった年でした。でこれはですね、誰がこの漢字をね決めるかと言いますとですね、京都にございます、清水寺というのね、清水寺というねお寺がございますけれども、そこの館長様、一番お偉い方がですね、毎年漢字を決めるんですね。で2020年はちょうどコロナが始まって、でみんなでいわゆるソーシャルディスタンスとかですね、あるいはマスクをしましょうとか手洗いしましょうとかいうね、いろんな規則が始まったわけです。それでそこで2020年の漢字はこの密という漢字でした。密というのはご存知ですね。いわゆるひっつくということです。密、あるいはハニーという意味もありますけれども、この三密といいまして、密閉したところね、いわゆるクローズドアでお話とかしちゃダメですよとかね、あるいは密集、いろんな人が集まるところ、そして密接って言ってすごくもうお顔とお顔がもう近づいてお話ししたりしてはダメですよっていうね、いろんなルールがありましたよね。これはもう3つのルールだから3密って言ったんです。ね、日本語がご理解される方はよく覚えておられると思いますけれども、これでこの3密から密という字が生まれたわけです。これ2020年はこの密という字でございました。で、じゃあ今年もうこれ12月ですよ。あともう1ヶ月しか残っておりません。この2021年の漢字は一体どの漢字が選ばれるかしらですね。いわゆる2021年のこの年はどんな年であったかということをね、思うわけです。でこれがちょっと皆様方にはちょっとね、本堂におられる方は小さい文字で大変申し訳ないんですけれども、 いわゆるオンラインの方々は見れると思いますね。いわゆる、推測です。そこではですね、明るいという妙の字とか、楽しいとかですね、願いとか、新しいとかですね、あるいは笑うとか、あるいは進むとか、光、そして和、幸せ、晴れるとかですね、そういう漢字がですね、こんな漢字が2021年の漢字に選ばれたらいいなっていうのがね、なんか集まってるみたいなんですね。で、これ見ますとですね、皆さんやっぱりポジティブになんかこの年を表現したいように思います。ねえ、本当そうですね。この2021年も大変厳しかったです。ねえ、いろんなイシュが出てきて、で、言ってる間に、この間からなんかオミクロンというね、新しい、またベリエントが、イシュが、もうアメリカ、ね、サンフランシスコ、ミネソタ、それからどこです？ハワイ、ニューヨーク、それからいろんなところでもう見つかってますね。で、世界的にはもう40カ国ぐらいはね、そういう方が見つかっているということです。おそらくひょっとしたらもう少し広まるかも分かりませんけれども、ようやく2022年ね、お寺もなんとなく軌道に乗って前のように皆さんが集まれるかなっていう期待をしております。ですからどうかこのオミクロンがですね、あまり感染がないように私は本当に心から願っているわけでございます。でね、まだこの2021年今年の漢字は分かりませんけれどね、例えば私はこういう情という、漢字はどうかなと思うんですね、個人的に。この情っていうのはいわゆる清いとかですね、あるいは清めるという意味があるんですけれども、この漢字には例えば手を洗うことをね、洗浄と言いますよね。それからまたいろんな意味がございますけれども、浄化とかですね、それから浄水、水をね、いわゆる浄水するとか、そして、清めることね、清浄とかいう意味もあります。でね、またこの浄はですね、浄土の浄でもあるんですね。皆様、浄土、ピュアランドって、英語で言いますけれども、日本語で言いますとこれ浄土なんですね。で、浄土っていうのは浄土という国があるというふうに仏教的は言います。しかしね、こういう浄土という国がこの宇宙の中どこかにそういう国があるとか、そういう星があるとか、そういう意味ではないんですね。浄土というのはそういう仏様のいわゆるお悟りのいわゆる境地があるという意味です。ですからお浄土って言ってもそれは阿弥陀様だけではなくして他の仏様、例えばアシュクブッダ、他のブッダありますけれども、これは東の方にございますね。でそのアシュクブッダの世界は東方東の、妙気世界なんていうんですね。それから薬師仏、これはメレスンブッダ、これも東の方にあって浄瑠璃世界と言います。お釈迦様の世界もあるんですよ。お釈迦様の浄土の世界は領寿仙の世界と申します。で、私どもの阿弥陀如来様の世界は西方極楽と、こういうわけですね。そして次の仏様となられます弥勒様、弥勒様の世界は外津仙のね、外津天というところに今ご修行ですけれど、そこの浄土があるということでございます。ですから仏様、いろんな仏様には国がある、それを浄土というわけです。でこの阿弥陀様のお国は西方極楽の浄土であるということなんですね。でこの浄土という国の意味、これはスカーバティっていうのがですね、まず一番初めのお経さんです。サンスクリットの名前はスカーバティ・ビューハ、スカーバティね。 これはハッピーということです。またクリーンということなんです。あるいはピュリティという意味もあるんですね。ですから浄土という漢字に変わったのは中国で変わったんです。いわゆるお釈迦様がインドで仏教をお披露目になされまして、その教えがシルクロードを渡って中国に行ったと。そうしますと中国の方は中国語ですよね、漢字の世界ね。ですからスカーバティというのをいわゆる浄土というふうに訳されたんです。で、浄土の国とはどんな国かというと、これはきれいな国なんだと。きれいな国ってどんなことですかと言いますと、そこにはですね、いわゆる私たちがいつも悩んだり苦しんだりする煩悩というものはないということです。ね、そういうふうにそのピュリティ、きれいな静かな国である、悟りの国であると、そういうことなんですね。ですからこの私たちが皆様方の愛される方々、一体どこに行かれたのかなってね、時々思われませんかね。この間もね、私どもの開教師の若い先生がですね、もう日本にご帰国されたんですけれども、先日やはりお病気のために強情されましたね。とても悲しかったです。私も何回もその先生と会ってるんですよ。こういう私たちのこういう人間がですね、息をしてね、こうやって言葉をしゃべって考えて物を食べて毎日生活している人間がですね、ある時を超えてこの世界からいなくなっていく、どういう状況かなと思いますね。その人はどこに行ったんだろう、思いませんでした？皆様方が愛される方々、その方々は一体どこに行かれたんかなって思われませんでしたですか？私が父をまた母を亡くした時はですね、思いました。私の愛する母は一体どこに行ったんだろう、もう会えない。皆さんもきっとそう思われたはずです。しかしどこにも行ってられませんですよ。その方々は全部阿弥陀様の悟りの国に行かれたんです。永遠のグッバイではないんですね。それが浄土真宗のいいところです。私たちは永遠にさよなら言うことないのです。悟りの国から私たちにこうしてこの正月命日に皆様をご招待されました。だからここに集まってくださっているのです。そして皆さんと共に南無阿弥陀仏をお唱えしてくださっているわけです。ですから私の父も母も、そして一緒に頑張ってきた若い開教師の先生、古代で亡くなられた先生、どこにも行ってられない。仏様になって阿弥陀様の悟りの世界から私たちに南無阿弥陀仏を届けてくださっているのです。それを聞かさせていただいているのが私たちなんですね。そしてこうやって手を合わせてその方々のことを思い出して心から会えてよかったね、ありがとう、またいつか会いましょうと、こういうふうに私たちは南無阿弥陀仏の中で申し上げるんです。それが親鸞上人様が私たちに届けてくださった阿弥陀様の深い深い願いであるわけでございますね。そういうことで12月31日にこの2021年の漢字が決まりますけれども、これが浄土の浄という国になるか分かりませんね。でも一つ私が申し上げたいことは、新しい土地2022年はどうかもっといい年になるように、そしてもっとたくさんの方々がお寺に戻っていただくことを私は心から念じております。本当に今日はこの12月の初月法要にお越しくださって、また オンラインで、ご覧くださっている方々に心より感謝申し上げます。ありがとうございました。それでは合唱いたします。Please join me 合唱 please。ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏。Thank you very much. Now, Rev Turner will give you an English Dharma message. Thank you.
Namandavats, 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 namandavats. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I wanted to start with a quotation, a reading, if I might. These are the words of the Buddha before he passed away at 80 years old. So, Reverend Wondra was mentioning that when we pass away, our relatives go to supreme nirvana, ultimate reality. This was true for the Buddha as well. And this was the message he left to his disciples and the everyday householders that followed him. Especially his attendant, Ananda, was very, very upset that they were going to lose the teacher. And he felt like, if the Buddha's body was gone, that everything is gone. And it's not true. The teachings remain. When our loved ones pass, their teachings remain. The relationship we had with them never dies. And we always carry them in our heart and minds. And sometimes that connection is actually stronger after they pass. Or maybe we appreciate it more deeply after they pass. So the Buddha said this, especially to Ananda, my disciples, the last moment has come, but do not forget that death is but the vanishing of a body. The body was born from parents and was nourished by food, so sickness and death is unavoidable. But the true Buddha is not a human body, it's the Dharma. A human body must vanish, but the Dharma will exist forever. He who sees my body only is not the one who truly sees me. He who accepts my teachings is the one who truly sees me. Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. So this is what we're trying to do at Shotsuki, right? Is to truly see the teachings and the influence and the relationship we had with our loved ones. So this Wednesday, December 8th, is Bodhi Day. The Buddha realized awakening in Bodhi Gaya at 35 years old after 6 years of practice. He started at 29. So he practiced every day for 6 years. And then he was able to realize initial awakening under the Bodhi tree. And this is India. Nepal didn't really exist yet. This is northern India. And, it's a little bit like Jesus. The Buddha lived and preached and interacted with his Sangha in kind of a small area of northeastern India by foot. And I've had some friends that actually are from India, and especially the part about realizing awakening at Bodhi Gaya and then walking to Sarnath at Deer Park and giving the Four Noble Truths as his first Dharma talk. One of my friends at work said that Sarnath is really far away from Bodhi Gaya. So when you read the text, it sounds like he got up from the Bodhi tree and walked a couple miles and gave this talk, but it's really far away. So my friend at work was doubtful that the geography wasn't right. But as Buddhists, we don't really look at these stories for their literal historical meaning. It's always the motivation for the story, the context of the story. And in Buddhism, I've read that our teachings are true not because they literally or historically happened, but because we learn from them and they have a positive effect on us. So they're true in a pragmatic sense. They're true in the sense that they affect our hearts and they help us along the path. So that's kind of the way we judge truthfulness in the Buddhist tradition. So it doesn't matter to me whether he could have walked to Sarnath from Bodhi Gaya or not. It's not important. I don't get caught on those details. It's the meaning of the story and why the story is told in that way and in that order. And you can go to India. This is kind of a blown up, that section blown up. You can go to India maybe when COVID's over, and this pilgrimage is very popular. You go to Bodhi Gaya where he was born. You go to Deer Park. You go to several of the sites where he gave sermons. You can go to where he gave the larger sutra, the sutra on the larger sutra. You can go where he passed away. So there's usually 5 spots that people visit. And the first one here is where he was born in Lumbini Garden, right? We sing that all the time. You can go and visit Lumbini Garden. And there's a city next to it called Kapilavastu. That's supposed to be his hometown, where his family raised him. And then over here, the arrow's now pointing at Bodhi Gaya. So a fairly long way to go from Kapilavastu to Bodhi Gaya to realize awakening. But, it took him 6 years, right? So he easily could have gone that far in 6 years. So, and then when he passed away, Kushinagara, that's where he passed away at 80. And that was the quote I read when we began our service. So, this is I went into I have an online version of our service book, and I Googled Rajagriha. It's a city in India, and you could go visit that too, and you can see a vulture peak. And it's actually an outcropping of rocks that looks kind of like a vulture. And this is where the Buddha gave his sermon on the larger sutra. And so it's kind of neat. I mean, these places exist. You can go see them. But the part here that's probably not literally true is 12,000 monks came to hear him speak, right? Like, that's not literally true. They're probably, his Sangha was maybe in the thousands, a couple thousand maybe, not 12,000. There's not enough room. But the idea is that he saw all beings as enlightened, right? It's symbolically important. So I'm not going to go all the way back to Lumbini Garden. I wanted to start with the Buddha leaving home at 29. So, something significant happens in his life. He realizes that as a royal young person, even death and dying and illness will come to him. And so I think he kind of thought, what's the point? And he began a spiritual journey. And so this is his favorite horse, Kanthaka, here on the left. And this is his attendant. Ananda was his attendant later in life as a Buddha, but as Prince Siddhartha, his attendant was Channa. This is Channa on the left. And this is Prince Siddhartha cutting his hair, his royal hair. And you can see Channa holding his jewelry and his fine silks, and the Buddha's now wearing a saffron robe, and he's going off into the forest to practice. And this is a little misleading too. When I hear forest, I think he's going like, for me, I'd have to go to Yosemite or Yellowstone. But most cities in India at this time were built on a river near a forest. So he didn't like leave home. He was just, he was very close to home, and he would go to practice. And there were many, many seekers like this at that time. So for the first, nobody really knows, but for the first fraction of the 6 years, he practices yogic practices with Udaka. So I haven't read this in that many books, but this idea of yogic practice, my wife is a yogi. She teaches yoga. This comes from the Hindu tradition. So, my conjecture is whoever wrote this, it's establishing shots. The Buddha tries Hinduism. It's not that great. And then in the next picture, you'll see he tries Jainism. Not that great. Those were the two main religions during the Buddha's time. The Buddha tries both. They don't work great, so he develops Buddhism. So I think this is kind of a product placement, the way this story's told. So the Buddha practices yogic concentration for many years, but what he finds is that when he's doing yoga, he feels grounded and peaceful and sincere. But when he stops, all those emotions come back, right? I'm getting older every day. I'm not going to live forever. No matter how much money I have, it's not going to help. Everyone ultimately passes away. And so that nagged at him. So after the first fraction of the 6 years, he goes and practices ascetic practices, which is very popular in Jainism. The idea in Jainism is that everything you do generates bad karma. Like just walking around, you're stepping on bugs, but you don't know it. And when you breathe, you're inhaling bacteria and your immune system's killing them. So like everything you do is negative. So the solution is to do nothing. So you sit, you don't eat. He becomes emaciated. These images are hard to find, but this is the way the Buddha looked after many, many years of asceticism. And it's extreme asceticism. It's really extreme. So, it's almost like you have to die to reach awakening, but then you don't want to die, and so then you have to eat a little bit, but then he found like this conflict, this contradiction. You can't do nothing forever. You have to do something, and then that takes you off the path. So he gives up on that. So he tries the two great religions of India. Neither one works. And now he finds a place to sit down in Bodhi Gaya under the Bodhi tree, which is like a ficus, right? And he was a monastic. So this is really like bad for like 4 reasons. So this is a challenge to monasticism as well. The Buddha meets this woman named Sujata. And this is a popular Indian woman's name. When I worked as a programmer, the friend who told me how far away Sarnath was, his wife's name was Sujata. So Sujata sees the Buddha, well, not the Buddha yet, but Prince Siddhartha, and wants to make an offering to him. And so she gives him, I like to say, sweetened milk. I always tell the kids it's like a vanilla milkshake. If you haven't eaten for a long time and you could have a vanilla milkshake, how could he turn that down? But this is a very provocative story because he's a monastic and he's associating with a woman, and she's young, and she's really pretty, and she's single, and she's giving him food. So those are 5. This is very provocative. So his original 5 students saw this as very provocative. So the Buddha is kind of even leaving the definition of monasticism. He gets his strength back, he gains back his weight, and he sits under the Bodhi tree until he realizes awakening. It's kind of like, I'm going to do this or die trying. And the interesting part of the story is his initial awakening happens in the morning, and he's facing east, and he sees this star. So this is important. He's facing east, it's in the morning, and he realizes initial awakening at 35. And then, this is a big deal, he stands up after 49 days, and he goes and teaches what he's experienced. He puts into words the content of his awakening. And I read a scholar the other day that said that this is the beginning of Pure Land Buddhism. This is when an internalized experience of awakening is being communicated to others through words and symbols. And this is Pure Land Buddhism. So I thought that was a very provocative and interesting statement. And then he teaches for 55 years, from 35 to 80, and his attendant is Ananda, his cousin, which is that quote was aimed at, and now he's going to have a second meal at 80. So he says the 2 most important meals in his life were the meal from Sujata and the meal from Kunda, who's a blacksmith. But this is a little bit of a joke. You have to be careful getting meals made by a blacksmith. They think that the food, it was tainted. It was bad pork or bad mushrooms. And the Buddha was already weak. He was 80 years old. He said, my body's like a cart that's falling apart. It's, he could feel his body falling apart like an old cart. And he ate this meal, and he got very ill for several days, and then he passes away at 80 years old. But he saw these 2 meals as most significant because the first one led to his initial awakening, and the second one led to his final and complete and supreme awakening that Sensei mentioned that happens to us all when we die. And so, and what's interesting about this is happening in the evening, and he's facing west. And like this is just general Buddhism. He's facing the Pure Land in the west. And there's also a bit of a trajectory here, or symbolism. You know, the sun rises in the east, and it takes a path across the sky, and then when the day's over, it sets in the west. So this is kind of a symbol of his life, of his journey. He begins awakening in the east. There's an arc, a 55-year arc of his life, of light, of the teachings, and then at the end of his life is in the west at night. So again, here are the, well, there's 6, but these are like the original monks that trained with him. And then in the background, you see everyday people, and on the right, you see royalty. So it's always been true in Buddhism that there's kind of been 2 paths. There's the path of the monastics, and there's the path of the householders. And we're in the path of the householders, but this has been kind of deprecated or downplayed. They were equal and separate. They had different practices. They did different things. I have a book in my office called The Buddha Dharma, The Way to Enlightenment. And I always tell this story. The Buddha told one group of people, the most important thing you can do is practice the precepts. And then I turned the page, and then the Buddha said to another group of people, the most important thing you can do is listen to the Dharma. And I thought, well, which is it? This is kind of confusing. And I couldn't figure it out, but I went back and looked. When the group he was talking to when he said, follow the precepts, that was the monastics. And then when you turn the page and he says listening to the Dharma is most important, which is what we do, he was talking to householders. So it was very interesting. The practices are just different. The context is different. So, the 3 great holidays for us is Hanamatsuri, which we hope we have in person in April. Then we have Bodhi Day in December, and we have Nirvana Day in February. And so, this is the arc of the Buddha's life. And, we might kind of think about, what was the event in our life that made us start to practice Buddhism? What question did we have, or what sense of unease did we have that drew us to the teachings as well? So, I think this is an example of how you would practice Buddhism. His life is kind of a template. It's kind of an archetype that we can look at and kind of represent it in our own lives with events that have occurred as well. We had at a beginning, we'll have an end. Someday we'll be facing west. And so I like to read this quote at memorial services and funerals and Shotsuki Hoyo because the Buddha is really telling us that people and things are impermanent, but relationships are always permanent. They never leave us. The influence that, like for instance, my great-grandfather, I don't think I ever met, but he had a profound effect on my life because he raised my grandfather, who raised my mother, who raised me. And so, this everything that we've received is almost beyond calculation. And at Shotsuki Hoyo, we stop for a minute and give thanks and humbly appreciate all that we've received, and that they actually live on in the relationships and the effect they've had on their family that continue. So if we could close with Gasho. My disciples, the last moment has come, but do not forget that death is but the vanishing of a body. The body was born from parents and was nourished by food, so sickness and death is unavoidable. But the true Buddha is not a human body, it is the teachings. A human body must vanish, but the teachings will exist forever. He who sees my body only is not the one who truly sees me. He who accepts my teachings is the one who truly sees me. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. So thank you very much. This concludes the English Dharma talk. I do have one announcement. We're announcing this early because the holidays are coming and we take off Christmas weekend and New Year's weekend. Our Honko special service is coming up on January 16th. It'll be at 10 a.m. And we're very lucky to get Reverend Orai Fujikawa. He's a Buddhist minister from the Buddhist temples of Canada. So we have the Buddhist churches of America. There's also the Buddhist temples of Canada. He will be our English and Japanese speaker. And he's recently published a book, I think through our BEC, called Encounter. These are poems and observations of a Buddhist minister in Canada. And on that day, it will be an online service only. It will be pre-recorded on YouTube. It'll premiere at 10 a.m. We'll have no one will be on campus that day. And the reason why we do this is so that we can invite people from far and wide and not worry about COVID. It's too hard to predict what may happen. The other thing Sensei's done that's really smart is for the upcoming special services, we have about one a month, we're trying to invite ministers that are very close by. So if the numbers get better, they can drive in and we can have a live service. And if the numbers stay the same or get worse, we can do this kind of format. So it gives us flexibility moving forward. So if we could close December Shotsuki with Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Naman Da Butsu, Naman Da Butsu, Naman Da Butsu. Thank you very much for attending, and please drive home safely.